just like a full disclosure, we are using a brand new streaming service to do our live broadcasting of our podcast. So this is the very first one. It's really
Full
exciting,
disclosure,
but we don't know what we're doing fully. We're kind of dive in and figure it out later kind of people. So that's what we're doing.
you.
Um, so happy New Year, Lisa.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Lauren.
So we wanted to sort of use the first episode of season 3, actually, of our Take an Art Break podcast to, to recap season 2. And that's sort of what we do at Art is Moving every January. We sort of plan out our goals and visions for the year. And so we thought we'd do that with the podcast. So let's dive right in, friend.
All right. Well, I noticed I went back to our podcast and I didn't know that we did so many podcasts. It was like, wow, we were on. And I love that we started January 2020 with what was or 2021 was our favorite viral artwork of 2020, and it was the Naked Athena.
Yeah.
And why do you think we started out with the Naked Athena? I mean, very provocative, right?
Yeah, I remember you sort of discovered it and sent it my way. And I thought, well, it's a perfect thing to chat about it because it was very current and for the time. And it was it seemed really important to talk about. That is still actually our most listened to podcast to this day. It remains.
Wow, that's the number one.
Number one is when we talked about Naked Athena. I mean, I think it was such an interesting event, and just to put yourself there and imagine experiencing all that and everything that was being said. And I too thought that was really interesting because the next conversation, because of we're talking about this random performance art piece, you and I talked about random acts of art. That was sort of the next conversation we talked about. And then we ended the year with very intentional conversation about journaling. And journaling is something that you, generally speaking, make the intention and you carve out the time to do. So I thought it was really interesting that we started off with very random acts of art and we ended with intentional acts of art. That's an interesting sort of roller coaster ride to go on for a year.
Yeah, I love that. I too. I love that the viral artwork was really exterior. Do you know what I mean? It was like basically a Naked Athena. Listen to the podcast if you haven't. This lady just, that was during the Black Lives Matter protests, right?
Yeah, it happened in Portland. Yes.
Yeah, she just like literally opened up.
Yeah.
and what people saw, and it's fascinating, like what happened with our year too, in terms of Black Lives Matter, in terms of art. You know what I mean? It feels like we've all been on this weird little roller coaster ride. And then, yes, to end the year being really like internal, like going within, so it's fascinating. Yeah, really fascinating. I love it. So I know I printed them out because I wanted to read them. The next one we did was with Ray Luskin, who's an awesome art warrior. And it was like, how can art help you find your purpose? That was amazing.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting to talk about, sort of, because we talk about the random encounter with art. That was Naked Athena, and everybody there was randomly encountering an art experience, whether they wanted to or not. And we can relate to that because we do that to people in hopes that they'll discover something within that they want to do. And so the next step made sense when you're talking about randomly encountering art and then going through that process of saying, you know what, I do want to make art. And then we talked with Ray about the power of art to really help you find your purpose in life. Like, even if art is not your purpose, like being an artist is not your purpose, art can still help you find what you're meant to do. And so that was a really interesting conversation. And then we went from there and we talked about making art part of your daily life and what that does to you mentally and emotionally, which would make
Elizabeth
sense.
Benson, Beth Benson,
Mhm.
right? That's
Yeah,
right.
and I mean, that would totally make sense, right? If art is helping you find your purpose, well, then, what would happen if you started making art every day, and made it part of your daily life?
It's
And
like
yeah,
find your purpose and then do it daily. I mean, not to be like snide, but that's really what it is. I mean, art does help you discover who you are, even if you don't feel you're an artist. But when you do create art and you talk to it and you build a relationship with it, it does kind of go, okay, this is your purpose. And
totally.
why not live? I mean, if you want to find your purpose, why not live it on a daily, like day to day, like every moment? So,
And also, why not, sort of check in and
yeah.
say, am I fulfilling my purpose? Do I have another purpose? Are there, because as we all know,
Mhm.
life can throw curveballs at you at any given moment, and it can change your purpose. It can change
So,
what you're meant to do, you know?
but it's so true. I'm in this course right now. It's called Lifebook. It's on the Mind Valley Academy. But the first one is about self concept, and it's really about health and wellness, and which is art. Making art is part of health and wellness. But it really talks about like why not develop your ideal self concept. You know what I mean? Don't be like a in a pinball machine where everything knocks you around. Why not? And that's really what your purpose is. Why not develop a self concept where you find your purpose on a daily
Yeah,
basis, if
right.
that makes sense. I don't
Yeah.
know. And the next one we did was why do people say no to taking an art break? I think that was a little frustration from us both because we're on a mission.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we get done talking to Beth about the daily practice, we did talk about during that conversation, I
That's right.
remember this because it's so funny. At the end of a conversation, we almost start like a part two
Right.
of the conversation. And that conversation ended with the notion of giving yourself permission.
Permission.
And so we were like, why do people need permission? And
Hmm.
of course, you and I needed to open up a little bit because you and I didn't really go through the process of giving ourselves permission because we had to. Like,
Right.
we were lucky to find art because we
Right.
wouldn't have survived without it. And
That's true.
so,
That's true.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
it's it's a little bit snobby for us to be like, why do people need permission when
Yeah.
we're saved by art, And so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is what we landed on. We landed on basically, why do people need permission? And so the question would be like, well, why would they be saying no to begin with?
Right.
Um, and so we talked about that. And I think, we talk about this a lot. That's when we started digging again into art wounds, and that people have art wounds, and everybody has an art wound. Not just one. Some people have 20, 2,000, whatever. And that
A
those,
million.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also just, I mean, just our society and our culture are, big influencers in terms of art being frivolous, waste of time, or that it needs to involve some sort of talent or skill and things of that notion. So what
Mm.
was it? What popped off of that one? That was oh yeah, that was when we talked about making art part of your workday. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
right. So
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting because that would be sort of the last place that people would probably think of taking an art break
But
in general.
just I mean, just in general, like, well, we say no to so many things. I think as humans, right? It's like there's an opportunity. It's like we just like say no all the time. It's almost like it's a like a reaction, right? We're not open to
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah.
And so, I mean, not just art, but like different
Life,
things. Like
just
we're
life
always like,
in general.
no,
Yeah.
no, no. So I think that no is almost like this, like security button. We want to stay safe. And we know when you make art, you expand and you become much larger than yourself, and universal becomes personal. The next one we talked about was how can art play a positive role in your workday, like you said. And
Yeah.
did we talk to Shannon at that
Yeah,
time?
that's when we talked to
Yeah.
Shannon because, yeah, and she gave us, tons of insight in terms of, um, the science behind why people should just be signing up for someone to come in on a monthly, weekly basis, and sort of some ideas of getting it into the workspace and what it does for your mental and emotional health of your staff and your
And
productivity levels.
productivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because it's sort of like to jump from that what you were talking about, that no button that you're like, nope,
I know. Yeah.
and to just dive into the workday, because that to me feels like where you would get a really big no from most places. Not all places, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but a good chunk of places would just be like, no thanks. We've got plenty to do here, and wouldn't really see the positive impact that an art breaking space or a monthly art making staff
Retreat.
celebration, yeah,
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
have for them. So but we're gonna dive deeper into that in 2022. We're really committed to helping everybody figure out a way to fit art into their lives, and at your workspace, that would be a great place to kind of, I don't know, take 5 minutes every day for 30 days, and see what happens at work and in your head and body and soul and all that kind of stuff. So
I
yeah.
love it. I know it's almost like we're asking people to experiment a bit because art is really experimental, right? So it's like just see. It's kind of like you were talking the other day about science. It's almost like scientific. Like, okay, just take an art break for 5 minutes every day and see what happens to your work environment, to the individuals, to productivity, to
Yeah.
happiness, you know?
I mean,
Um,
we've been jibber jabbering about taking an art break together into the world since 2008. And so there's no only right. And we'll keep saying it. We're never going to be
right,
quiet about it,
right.
but you got to find creative ways to help people sort of prove it to themselves that it's worth it. Right.
Yeah, that it's really worth it.
Yeah.
The next one we had was how can you discover your personal art break? I think that was just you and me, right?
Yeah, and because again, it was a sort of a spin-off of the workday one, because we were just talking to Shannon about people shying away from it and not necessarily being open up to it because of what art does to you. Art
Mhm.
makes you can make you really vulnerable,
Vulnerable,
and
yeah.
it might let someone see a side of yourself that you're not ready to let them see. And or you might start judging yourself and have that troll sitting on your shoulder and
Yeah,
saying, well, you can't draw. And so
yeah,
we got into the conversation of saying, well, you don't have to draw to
right.
take an art break. And so it really let us down in terms of our mission. This is what's so great about this podcast, is it helps you and me sort of hone in, and
Yeah,
it guides us. But it really helped us realize that what we're trying to say to people is, um, we're trying to help you find your art break. And your art break could be a walk in the woods. Your art break could be putting some headphones on and
mhm,
listening to meditation music while you wash the dishes.
mhm,
It could be listening to the birds outside, and it could be painting in your studio, and
right,
whatever it is, right? It's
right.
we're here to help you discover that, and we're here to help sort of expand your notion of what making art part of your life really looks like.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no rules. That's the beautiful thing. There's no rules.
Right.
So, you
Yeah.
know, and you can break all the rules. That's what I love about art is there's no rules, and break any rules that exist if they do exist.
Right.
So it's like just create. The next one I love, we did that really special conversation, the art and value panel. I think we had Ray, we had Sharon Burton, Beth Benson, Shannon. Who else? Am I forgetting somebody? That was a very powerful conversation about really the value of art.
Yeah, that was. And I think, again, it was basically to just continue to talk about the fact of just how important it is for communities, not only individuals, but communities, to uh,
Create.
just to start doing it. It's especially, I mean, art is always valuable. It always has been valuable.
Mhm,
It's even valuable now historically to discover about ancient civilizations. But
mhm,
it's important. It's really important right now as people's mental health is just on a downward spiral. And I think we really wanted to talk about how valuable art could be for individuals and for society as a whole as we battle through a new sort of way of being social, right? As
Yeah.
COVID,
Yeah.
so we sunk deep into COVID. And so that was a really important conversation to have. Yeah.
What I loved about that was it was a chorus. We found, this little group of people that are doing the same thing as we are doing, and they have the same passion and the same mission and vision as Art is Moving. So that was really exciting and very energizing to know that there's a group of people out there that are like, yeah, let's do this. Let's make art. Everybody needs to make art, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that launched us into this realm of basically wanting to connect with people more
Right.
uh, in terms of there are so many people out there doing so many great things for art and for people
Mhm.
through art.
Yeah.
And so that launched us down this pathway, which we're going to work on this year in terms of making connections and really helping people connect with not only Art is Moving, but everybody, as many other people that we've discovered. And so we're going to add that resource page to our website this year.
Yeah.
Making
Really, like,
connections.
for me, it's really that artist service, art equals service. And, as a practitioner, as we are practitioners of Art is Moving, you know what I mean? Like getting people to do it is service. It's our service to the world. So,
Oh yeah. I mean, you and I have talked about that all the time about that we're sort of servants. We are artists in society,
right,
right? And we
right.
are servants to that society. That's what's so interesting is that,
Mm,
um, I'm this is, and it's funny because this is my art. Sounds
right.
interesting, and a lot of people would disagree with me, I'm sure, and we could have loads of conversations about that. But
Do
uh,
that.
yeah, my art is funny enough getting other people to make art. It sounds funny to say, but it is, and it has been for a really long time, and it's a lot of fun.
It is fun. So our next one was, what can you do when you don't feel inspired to take an art break? I think that was just you and I feel.
Yeah, that was another. That was probably another sort of a little. We were dragging down a little bit, and kind of, it's everybody goes through ups and downs, and we were saying, okay, well, we're kind of not feeling it today, so we're
Inspired.
not. Yeah, we're not feeling it today. I'm sure
Mhm.
there are other people who are not, and so let's talk
Right,
about that. Let's be
right.
direct and let's tackle that. And we came up with a ton of really cool art breaks during that talk. So if people are looking for some art break ideas, they should listen to that podcast for sure.
Then the next one was really fun. That was with Deborah Epstein. What can you do through creativity to bring peace and joy into the world? That was a lovely conversation.
Yeah,
Powerful.
that one was really like energetic and inspiring. And I walked away with that one with tons of ideas running through my head and feeling really connected and like I could go out and save the world. That was a good one too. Yeah.
Art can save the world.
Yeah, art saves the world. Yeah.
And the next one we had Sharon Burton on, who's awesome. It was, how do you find your creative spark after living years without it? So that was a fascinating conversation of someone that was dormant in terms of
Mhm.
creativity and how to spark it, you know.
Yeah, and I love that because it's basically, I mean, it just makes sense if you think about the timeline, right? We were talking about personal art breaks. We were
Mhm.
talking about why you say no.
Mhm.
And that's Sharon right there. She's a smoosh of that. She helps you sort of discover what art wounds you might be carrying, why you might be saying
Mhm.
no to it, or why you started saying no to it and how you can start saying yes to it again. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, that was an awesome conversation. Sharon's awesome.
Yeah, we've had such amazing guests. The next one we did, I think it was vacation time. How do you take an art break when you're away from home? That was
Yeah.
us just giving
Yep.
ideas and art
Right.
break
That was fun. That
ideas.
was over the summer, right? We wanted to make sure people realize that you don't have to, again, it's not about being inside of a studio to, you don't have to have a studio to take an art break. You can take an art break anywhere. And why not take it when you're on a road trip or
With your kids, how fun is that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The next one was with Diana Ryan. How that's she's a neighbor of yours. How can a community do to make art part of its daily life? How can a community do to make art part of its daily life? Does that make sense?
No, I think we need to change that title. What can a community do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what can a community do? I mean, we talked to Diana about it because she's a pro at it. She gets her community to do it in their neighborhood. She has a hub in her neighborhood or ceramic studio. And so she had some great tips for, and a lot of it, which was really interesting. She talked about just you do it, you start it as an
Yes.
individual.
Yes.
And if you start, then you will inspire one, if not more, other people to do it. And so it's a very individual ripple effect, right?
And also, I think there's we know it from Art Break Day, obviously, but there's something so magical when you create with people together. We know it. We've talked about it forever, right? But there's something like really amazing and magical that happens when you're creating with a group of people. I mean, there's individual creation, which I love, right? But there's something that happens, and it doesn't seem like it's about the product for me. Do you know what I mean? It's really about the relationship that is built while creating together, that's art in itself. And that's what you were talking about, your version of art as art is moving,
My version of art is always about the experience. It's never about the piece of paper you have at the end or whatever you create at the end. It's about the actual experience you have making the work. And if you're surrounded in a group of people, or if you're working with a group of people to make that art, that is, all the more powerful for you and for the community.
It's amazing. And then our next podcast is just perfect. It was with Dean Bowers, and she had that amazing project, the Together While Apart project, which was about that. But that was amazing.
And we asked that question, what happens when you make art together, right?
Right.
And it was really interesting because she made art together with people by not getting together with them.
Right? It was still powerful, right?
Yes. And it was, so, I mean, that's the thing. That's what I love about, if you reflect along last year of all of our conversation, is that we're talking about the same thing, but in so many different ways, right? So you can make art together without getting together. You can make art together by getting together.
Right.
You can make a difference just inside you, and it will affect the rest of the world. Yeah. So it was really interesting to go from the conversation for Diana into the conversation with Dean, because they're both creating community, but they're doing it in a very different way.
Right. So there's different ideas of community, or different descriptions of community. Yeah, it's just, so it's open. Again, there's no rules. The next one was like, how does art help you remember to play? Which is really cool.
I thought that was inspired by Dean, because she said that, I mean, that is very, along the lines of what she said to folks, right? We asked her, like, what did you do because not everybody that she invited would call themselves an artist, which was my favorite part of the project. I think that's brilliant to do that. And she was just like, I mean, it doesn't matter what you make, just play. And so, and I, at the time, had been reading that book, The Yes Brain, and it was all about play. And so it was just like a perfect combination of that's the reason that a lot of people say no to art, is because they think that they're not allowed to play anymore. And how sad is that? But I think it's true. I think it happens to people. Is you think you have to be like an adult. And I mean, what does that even mean anyway? You're not allowed to have fun anymore. You have to have a very specific list of fun.
Yeah.
I think maybe.
Yeah, you were speaking about, I love that it was more like art making is more spontaneity. You know what I mean? It's more about getting in flow. It's not about like, okay, now I have to draw this picture, It's more like play, which is like, I loved it. I think you were talking about, you were with your young son, and he was walking home, and there was puddles, and you guys were jumping in puddles or something like that. That's play. That's art, right?
Yeah. That was our little performance on the way home.
Little performance art. So play, remember to play. Yeah, that was a fun conversation because it's, I think it's interesting because we do forget to play, even like I do. You know what I mean? It's like at times it's like we take ourselves so serious, it's like life, life should be this, life should be, and it shouldn't be that,
It
and
should. Yeah.
no, you can choose fun and play and humor and joy.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I hope you do. And some days it's harder than others, and
Of
that's reality
course.
right there. But that's what's so beautiful about a regular art break routine, or finding that personal art break that we were talking about, or being part of a community that inspires you to make
Do
art on a regular basis, right? Is that it'll the more you do it, the more you will sort of inherently choose joy and gratitude and being thankful and play, because
yeah,
it'll be more ingrained inside of you. I mean,
yeah,
it's just like taking a deep breath. It's just like meditation, right? Is that anyone who's had a regular meditation practice
yeah,
is more likely to take a deep breath when they're about to rage out on someone than someone
yeah.
who hasn't. It's just because it's like a muscle,
I was
right?
about to say it's a muscle. Basically, it's a muscle. And the more you do it, and it's almost like, or if you look at news or you look at whatever social media, it seems it's a negative vibe. And I think we're saying, no, 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 build this muscle that is more a joy muscle. you know,
Build your joy muscle. I like that. Yeah, let's build a joy muscle.
Build
Yeah.
your joy muscle.
Yeah.
And then in November, we had Gretchen Miller, who's art therapist, which is really interesting. And it was how can art heal your trauma? So we kind of like it almost went from play to trauma. It was a
Yeah.
flip.
Well, what was really interesting about the play conversation is that we were talking about why do we sort of not remember how to play as adults. And I do think that trauma has something to do with that,
Oh yeah.
right?
Mhm.
You kind of, and I do think that you build boxes or walls, or and you close things off, and you go from like a loosey goosey 6-year-old to a really tight 35-year-old, or whatever you want to
Yeah,
say. And so,
yeah,
yeah, that was a really good conversation about sort of, and we were talking about that everybody has trauma. Obviously, there's a
obviously we all
huge
do.
spectrum of it. You know, some people have way more trauma than other people, but it doesn't matter. Art can serve you in some way. It might not give you all the answers, but it's certainly a step in the right direction.
And I mean, obviously, if the trauma is huge and you're working with art, you go consider going to a therapist is always really important,
Mhm.
just to guide you through that process. And it's really deep. I was in Jungian therapy for a long time, and I would bring my art there, and it was amazing, like how deep and how I was peeling the onion even more deeper with the guidance of my shrinks. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Right. And that's what Gretchen was saying, right? In combination with other therapies, or maybe
mhm.
it's the one you need, and that it will only help you discover more. It will definitely not close you off more.
Yeah, yeah. Art is definitely a portal or a door opening, it opens doors. So December we did with Mary McCarthy, which is awesome. It does, how does journaling help you heal? And that's her story is phenomenal. She had MS and healed herself through journaling. It was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
So we went from this like, she's a physical and emotional healing
Yes.
through journaling. And so we ended on that note of sort of the intentional act of creativity, right? Which is what
Hmm.
we define an art break as. And
Hmm.
her personal art break that she discovered through necessity,
Right.
some desperation. And
Right.
we're so glad she did, because she's been such a service to her community ever since, was
Hmm.
journaling.
Yeah.
She started journaling because she had to learn how to, write with a new hand
Yeah.
later in life. Like, and then all of a sudden it opens these floodgates for her, because that's what art is going to do for you. And she hasn't stopped since. And now she's on a mission to get as many other people to do it as well, because she knows, right, the power of it now. Yeah. So like, what a journey for 2021 to go
Yeah.
from this very, right, wide open artwork of performance art, at least that's what we viewed it as,
Right.
of this woman walking nude through a protest, and everyone basically stopping and not being able to do anything.
Right. I think she stopped the violence. There's some, I think, yeah. She
um
stopped the conflict that way.
yeah, right, yeah, and then to go, so that's like a, so interesting, right? An individual making a huge impact on a community.
On a community, you're right? A
And then
crowd, a
we,
community.
right, and we talked about community, and then back into the going within, and healing within in order to heal outwardly. I mean,
But the huge thing is, for the end of our year, December, is she went in and then she healed, and then she's like, I need to show the world. So she's building a community and showing people that this is the way. Almost, this is the way. You can heal yourself through art, or you can make life better through art. So
definitely.
yeah, definitely
So,
a powerful year of art.
I know. So what do you think, what topics, what questions do we need to talk about this year? I mean, what subject matter have we not covered? That's a question, right?
That's a great question, because I don't know the answer to that. And if you have a question, we'd love to answer it. Well, I think it's, for me, it's almost like I love, and I didn't know, because I just printed out the titles of our podcasts. It's not like I go back and listen to them, you know what I mean? And go, but it was like an evolution, like you said, from, and so I think it just is evolution. Like, we did, the last one was journaling, the internal, discovery into the external. So I think it's just an evolution. We'll see what happens. I mean, the way I think we fly is we're very organic. Whatever comes our way, or whatever idea energizes us, we go for it. Right?
Yeah. If anyone has a question that they feel like they would like to either talk with us about, you're welcome to come on here and chat with us. Or you don't have to. You can just send us the question and we'll chat about it, or we'll find someone else who wants to answer it alongside with us. So just, you can email us, takeanartbreak@artismoving.org, or you can hit us up in the comments, or find us on our various social places and get in touch with us. And tell us what we should talk about this year. We'd love to hear from you. And we're excited to talk again soon.
Yes, artist power.
I can't wait. I'm excited for next month and what we'll be diving deep into in 2022.
We do have a couple really cool speakers lined up, so I'm excited about those conversations. We'll see what happens.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Next month.